Peace be upon you, and welcome to a new episode. Imagine that, 2 days before your birthday, your wife takes you to a temple so you can pray together. Then she hands you a glass of juice with her own hands. Naturally, you feel happy and think to yourself that she loves you, cares for you, and is looking out for you. You drink the juice, and just a few minutes later, your body starts shaking strangely, and you have no idea what's happening. But what's even more disturbing is that the person who should have been the first to rush to your side, hold your hand and take you to the hospital was your wife. Yet she simply stood there beside you, calmly watching, as if she were waiting for something to happen. And this isn't a scene from a horror movie. This is a real incident that took place in the city of Jaipur, India, on August 5th, 2026. What happened that day was only the first step in a complicated conspiracy, and a surveillance camera played a very important role because it recorded something that exposed a crime that was supposed to remain hidden forever. This story has so many details that it will make you realize that sometimes reality can be stranger than any movie or fictional story. So stay with me until the end of the video to find out how the truth came to light and how the entire conspiracy was uncovered. Let's start from the beginning, specifically in the Vishwakarma neighborhood of Jaipur, the capital of the Indian state of Rajasthan. A 27-year-old young man named Mahesh Meena lived in this neighborhood. Mahesh worked at a factory that manufactured iron sheets, and he helped his family with household expenses just like any young man trying to support his family. His father, Babulal Meena, worked as a daily wage laborer to provide for his children, while his mother was a homemaker who took care of the house and family. He also had a brother who worked various small jobs to help with the family's expenses. The entire family lived together in a simple home. They weren't living in luxury, but they were very close to one another. Their parents had raised their children to be respectful and to always stand by each other. Mahesh, in particular, was known among the neighbors as a quiet and kind young man. At work, he treated his colleagues with respect. People who knew him spoke highly of him. They saw him as a hard-working young man who earned an honest living, finished his work, and returned home without getting himself involved in trouble. Mahesh's life and his family's life continued normally and peacefully until the time came when Mahesh decided to get married. In 2025, about a year and a half before the incident, Mahesh married a young woman from the same city of Jaipur named Kavita, who was 23 years old. The marriage was arranged in the traditional way common in the area. The two families arranged the marriage, and there had been no love story between them before they got married. This detail is very important because we'll come back to it later. At first, everything seemed completely normal. Kavita became part of her husband's family, helped her mother-in-law with the household chores, and treated her father-in-law with respect. The people around them saw a peaceful home and believed that their married life was stable. No one could have imagined that behind the smile Kavita showed every day, there was a completely different story, and that she was hiding a major secret from everyone around her. But the truth was that Kavita had something completely different inside her from what she showed to people. Every now and then she would find a reason to leave the house alone. The most common excuse she used was that she was suffering from inflammation of the uterus, that she needed to visit a doctor regularly and take medication, and that she might even need surgery in the future. This excuse allowed her to leave the house multiple times, claiming that she was going to the doctor. Mahesh's family believed her without suspecting anything, because no one could imagine that behind her calm words, she was carefully hiding a huge secret. Over time, arguments began to arise between her and Mahesh at home. At first, they were very minor issues, just arguments over ordinary everyday things. But Kavita started noticeably escalating the problems, as if she was looking for any reason to leave the marriage. Even the small disagreements she had with her husband she tried to turn into major crises. But the problem for her was that Mahesh was a calm and patient person. He didn't like to let disagreements grow, and whenever they had a problem, he would try to calm things down, make peace with her, and resolve the issue. And strangely enough, that was the worst thing for Kavita. Because every time she tried to provoke a major argument or find a reason for the marriage to end, her attempts failed because of Mahesh's calmness and understanding. At that time, Mahesh's family didn't take these disagreements seriously enough. They saw them as normal problems that happened between any newly married couple, believing that the two of them were simply still getting used to each other. No one had any idea that these disagreements might have been caused by something much deeper, and that Kavita was hiding a truth that no one around her could have imagined. As the pressure increased, Kavita became more determined to find a way out of the marriage, even though at first she didn't have a clear plan for what she was going to do. And little by little, the idea that she had to do something final began to grow in her mind. Instead of waiting for someone's approval for a divorce or trying to resolve the situation with her husband's family, she chose a much more difficult and dangerous path, a path from which there would be no turning back. Now we come to August 5th, 2026, the day when everything changed. Early that morning, Kavita told her husband Mahesh that she wasn't feeling well and that the inflammation she had been suffering from had gotten worse. She told him that he needed to accompany her to an area called Bagru so she could see a doctor, and that they might also stop at a nearby temple. Mahesh, who trusted his wife like any husband would, got on his motorcycle with her, and the two of them left home that morning. The hours passed. Noon came and went, but the two of them still hadn't returned. The family began to worry, and Mahesh's father, Babulal, tried calling his son several times, but no one answered. After a while, Kavita answered the phone and told them that they were on their way home and would arrive soon. But some time later, Kavita called again. This time, her voice sounded frightened and confused. She told Mahesh's family that his condition had suddenly deteriorated while they were still on the way, and that she was in an area called Pulia number 14, meaning near a small bridge or passage in the area. She told them that she had tried everything she could to get him there, and that she had even tied him to the motorcycle and dragged him for about 200 feet to get him to a safe place. As soon as Mahesh's family heard this, they were terrified and rushed to the location as quickly as they could. When they arrived, they found Mahesh in extremely serious condition, so they immediately took him to a private hospital on Sikar Road. The doctors tried to save him and did everything they could, but unfortunately, the truth was devastating. Mahesh had already died, or he died shortly after arriving at the hospital. The hospital, as required by law, immediately notified the police because the death was sudden and unnatural. A case of suspicious death was opened, and the body was sent for an autopsy. The first thing that made even the doctors suspicious was the presence of white foam coming from Mahesh's mouth when he arrived at the hospital. This is a classic sign that can appear in cases of poisoning. One family member later said that the doctors explicitly told them at the time that the young man had actually died several hours before he reached the hospital, meaning that the amount of time he had spent away from home was much longer than Kavita had claimed. But this was where things became even more complicated. During the initial autopsy, the poison believed to have been used, sulfos, locally known as sulfas, did not clearly appear in the preliminary tests. Sulfos is a highly toxic chemical that can release lethal phosphine gas when it comes into contact with moisture or stomach acid. Because the substance was not clearly detected during the initial examination, the doctors recorded that the exact cause of death could not be determined at that stage. The family was completely devastated, especially because Mahesh was a young man with no known medical history. He had not complained of any health problems just one day before the incident. Kavita was crying in front of them, saying things like, "I couldn't do anything. I tried to help him, but I couldn't." But according to later statements from family members, there was something about her behavior that didn't seem to match the magnitude of the tragedy. She was crying, but not with the intensity they expected from a woman who had suddenly lost her husband. And at certain moments she seemed strangely calm amid all the chaos and mourning around her. This was the first faint thread of suspicion that began to form in her husband's family's minds, although at the time they couldn't quite explain why they felt that way. After the burial procedures and religious rituals, another very important moment came in Hindu culture. The ritual of immersing the deceased's ashes in the Ganges River in the city of Haridwar, a sacred city for Hindus. Mahesh's family decided that some relatives would go and perform the ritual, but strangely, Kavita insisted that she had to go herself. She said that she loved her husband deeply and that she personally needed to be the one to take his ashes there. Her father-in-law and Mahesh's brother tried to convince her that she didn't need to put herself through the journey and that they would go instead. But she refused, cried, and insisted on going with unusual determination. Despite the small doubts that had already begun to grow because of her strange behavior, the family allowed her to go. Kavita traveled to Haridwar and performed the immersion ceremony unusually quickly. In fact, she arrived and completed the ritual before the other family members who were also traveling to the same place. Then she returned home. But Mahesh's brother had a feeling that something wasn't right about the way his brother had died, and he couldn't ignore it. So he decided to start looking into the matter himself. And something strange happened immediately after Mahesh's death, something that caught the family's attention even before they knew anything about the surveillance camera. Instead of staying at her husband's family home, or even returning to her own parents' house, Kavita went straight to the home of her lover, Ganesh. She stayed there with him for a while before returning home. Of course, at the time, the family had no idea where she had been. The behavior was extremely strange from the family's perspective, but at that point, no one understood why she had done it. It remained just another question mark in their minds, until the rest of the story began to emerge, one piece at a time. Mahesh's brother went to the exact place where Kavita claimed she had found her husband in poor condition, specifically the area known as Pulia number 14. There, he began asking people in the area whether anyone had seen anything unusual on the day of the incident. But no one was able to give him any clear information. While looking around, he noticed a surveillance camera mounted on a nearby shop. That's when a very simple thought occurred to him. If the camera was working, it might have recorded everything that happened on the day Mahesh died. He went to the shop owner and asked to see the recordings from August 5th. He explained that his brother had died under mysterious circumstances and that he needed to find out the truth. The shop owner agreed and played the footage. And this was the moment when the entire story began to take a completely different direction. The camera had recorded footage from around 5:15 p.m. on August 5th. Mahesh and Kavita appeared in the footage, but the surprise was that they weren't alone. 3 men appeared with them. No one in the family knew who they were, and they were riding 2 motorcycles. On the first motorcycle, there was one young man with Kavita sitting behind him. On the second motorcycle, there were 2 young men, with Mahesh sitting between them. They appeared to be holding him up so that he wouldn't fall. The video showed the men getting Mahesh off the motorcycle. It was clear that he could barely move. They then tried to take him toward a small staircase next to the shop, but Mahesh collapsed on the ground before they could get there. Kavita was holding a bottle of water. She splashed some of it on his face and tried to give him some water. But what appeared in the footage was extremely strange, because her actions didn't look like a genuine attempt to save him. Instead, they appeared more like an attempt to make it look to anyone watching that she was trying to help him. A short while later, Mahesh lost consciousness completely. What was even more suspicious was that the three men then calmly left the area, as if nothing had happened. After they left, Kavita called her father-in-law and told him that Mahesh's condition had suddenly deteriorated and that she was alone with him and trying to help him. But the footage told a completely different story. It was the first real piece of evidence showing that something was wrong with Kavita's account. The problem was that the video contradicted almost everything Kavita had said. From the beginning, she had claimed that she had been alone with her husband the entire time. She never mentioned that 3 other men had been with them. After watching the footage, Mahesh's brother began investigating the identities of the 3 young men himself. He asked relatives and family acquaintances, and through their connections, he was able to learn their names. One was named Ganesh Meena, another was Ajay Meena, and the third was Golu Prajapat. After asking around about Ganesh through relatives, he made a shocking discovery. Ganesh had been in a romantic relationship with Kavita for around 9 years. That meant their relationship had begun many years before her marriage to Mahesh and had continued even after she got married, without anyone in the family knowing anything about it. The investigation later uncovered another important detail. Ganesh had covered his face and neck with a black cloth at the time of the incident. It was later discovered that he had purchased the cloth from a well-known shop in Kajori, in the nearby Bassi area of Jaipur. This raised suspicions that covering his face had been deliberate, so that no one would be able to easily identify him if the surveillance footage was reviewed later. After Mahesh's brother gathered all this information, he told the family everything he had discovered. The shock was enormous, not only because their son had died under mysterious circumstances, but also because all the suspicion was now beginning to point toward his wife, Kavita, whom they had treated like their own daughter. The shock became even greater when they learned that she had been secretly involved with Ganesh for around 9 years, and that no one had known anything about the relationship throughout all that time. Despite the shock, the family decided to remain calm and not confront Kavita immediately. They were afraid that she might flee or try to get rid of any evidence that could still be in her possession. Mahesh's father, Babulal Meena, despite his overwhelming grief over the loss of his son, decided to take matters into his own hands. He began gathering every detail and piece of evidence one by one before officially going to the police. On August 9th, the family went to the VKI police station and filed an official complaint, expressing their suspicion that Mahesh's death had been unnatural. In the complaint, they named Kavita, along with the 3 men who had appeared in the CCTV footage. Even so, the family continued gathering evidence on their own because they believed they needed strong and clear evidence for the truth to come out and for the full legal process to begin. From August 9th until August 16th, for an entire week, the family decided to keep a close watch on Kavita day and night without letting her realize that they suspected her. They wanted to make sure she stayed around and didn't run away or do anything unexpected. That week was like a silent, psychological battle inside the house. In front of Kavita, they acted normally and comforted her as though she were genuinely a grieving widow. But inside each of them was a mixture of fear, anger, and deep suspicion. They would exchange knowing looks behind her back without saying a word. At the same time, they secretly recorded her phone calls and conversations using a hidden mobile phone without her knowledge. These recordings revealed more details about what she was feeling and thinking. In one of the recordings, Kavita was seen speaking with a strangely calm demeanor and a smile on her face. She said something shocking. "I'm finished. My husband's family is going to kill me." In another recording, she was on a video call with one of Ganesh's friends and clearly said, "How long is he going to keep hiding? If he gets arrested, I'll get arrested too." She was extremely afraid that the truth would be exposed. But strangely, her biggest fear wasn't her husband's family, or even the police. She was more afraid of how her own family would react. When the family confronted her with all the evidence, especially the CCTV footage showing the three men, Kavita initially denied everything stubbornly. She claimed the video was wrong and insisted that the woman in it wasn't her. She tried to convince them that they were confusing her with someone else. But the family didn't give her any room to escape. Every time they showed her a clearer shot than the one before, they would ask her directly, "We can clearly see your face in this video. That's you. Why are you denying it?" At one point, the family decided to bring her father into the confrontation. They believed that her father's words might affect her more than anyone else's. And that's exactly what happened. When her father sat in front of her and calmly asked her to tell the truth, Kavita began to break down more than she had at any point before. The pressure continued for hours. As time passed, she began to feel that there was nowhere left for her to run, and that every possible escape route was closing around her. Until she reached the moment when she could no longer continue denying everything. Kavita broke down, began crying, and confessed everything in front of the family, with her father present as a witness to her confession. She said that on August 5th she initially took her husband Mahesh to a temple. There, she allegedly put tablets containing the poisonous substance sulfose into his juice and made him drink it without suspecting anything. After the symptoms of poisoning began to appear, she called her lover Ganesh and asked him to come and help her. But instead of taking Mahesh to the hospital, they allegedly moved him from one place to another for around 2 or 3 hours, as though they were waiting for the poison to take full effect. When they were convinced that there was no hope of saving him, they left him in the area known as Pulia number 14. After that, Kavita called her father-in-law and tried to stage the scene as though Mahesh had suddenly become seriously ill and she had found him in that condition, while claiming that she had been alone with him and that no one else had been there. Her confession also revealed the real motive behind everything. Kavita wanted to officially marry Ganesh and live with him openly after 9 years of their secret relationship. She saw her marriage to Mahesh as the only obstacle standing in her way. After all her attempts to create problems that could lead to a divorce had failed, she decided to get rid of him permanently. Even her strange insistence on traveling to Haridwar herself to immerse his ashes was actually an attempt to get rid of any physical evidence that could later be used against her, especially since the initial autopsy had failed to conclusively detect the poison. After her confession, the family took all the evidence to the Jaipur police and handed over the recordings, CCTV footage, and the names of those involved. Under the supervision of Prashant Kiran, Deputy Commissioner of Police for the Western area of Jaipur, the police launched a formal investigation. They compared Kavita's statements with Ganesh's statements and the details captured in the videos, and they found clear contradictions between their accounts. Police confirmed that the story Kavita had initially told the family, that she had been alone with her husband the entire time, was completely fabricated. The evidence uncovered during the investigation also matched her confession to the family regarding the poisoning and the premeditated plan. Based on all this evidence, Kavita and her lover Ganesh Meena were officially arrested on August 19, 2026, and taken into judicial custody for further investigation. A case that had initially been treated as a mysterious death had now turned into a carefully planned murder case. And it proved that what ultimately uncovered the truth wasn't the initial official police investigation, but the determination of a brother who refused to believe that his brother had died a natural death. He decided to search for a surveillance camera that turned out to be the only witness to a crime that had almost completely escaped justice. If it hadn't been for his suspicions and his determination to follow every small detail, the case might have been closed as a mysterious natural death, while Kavita could have eventually gone on with her life alongside her lover after a superficial period of mourning, with no one ever knowing that behind the scenes a carefully planned murder had taken place. This story forces us to confront a disturbing reality. The people closest to you can sometimes be the very people who are furthest from your true heart. Years of living together aren't always enough to truly know what is going on inside the mind of the person sleeping beside you every night. Mahesh spent months completely trusting his wife, never once suspecting that she was quietly planning his death. And that's what makes this story more terrifying than an ordinary crime. Because the weapon wasn't a knife or a gun, it was a smile and a false sense of trust that lasted for months. This story also raises a much bigger question. Can you live with someone for years while their heart remains attached to someone else without ever noticing that something is wrong? And would justice ever have been served if there hadn't been that one person in the family who followed his instincts and refused to stay silent? And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. If this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.